I saw the iOS
Cool.
update post that you made. What have you been
Yeah.
thinking about lately in that world?
Yeah, I think performance all of April for a lot of brands has just been garbage on Meta. It really comes down to just poor traffic quality and poor targeting, which for me often comes my first place is to look at like targeting, audience delivery, stuff like that. And then when you really nothing showing consistent, a signal is the next thing I look at. And I started researching kind of what Apple updates might have been and noticed there was quite a few. And I think if anything, it feels like March 2024 when there were some pretty big iOS adjustments and folks on Meta ads started to experience a plunge in performance. It felt the same way where we're just trying to diagnose, figure out what's working, figure out what's not. Everything is just, the algorithm is just not working like it had previously. You do all your typical things, you try to pull back budget. ROAS normally will bounce back for a couple of days when you do that. Just not happening. Started to look at Signal, heard some insights from a couple other people I'm close to in the industry that some have connections at Meta. And of course, there's a couple tweets going around about Meta customer support saying potential iOS stuff. So that's where I'm leaning right now. I think it really has to do with Signal. So something I've done in the last week with that hypothesis is, okay, instead of a couple things, instead of optimizing on a 7-day click, launching 7-day click, 1-day engaged view, which I know, has worked on some other accounts. We did that. We also moved one account to 1-day click, not fully, but ran a couple new campaigns with the idea of like, all right, shortening that attribution window is going to shorten the data loss opportunity, meaning like signal loss over 7 days versus 1 day. It's just going to tighten things up, allow Meta to go after more primed audiences. That's helped. We relaunched a new customer purchase event campaign, which is a custom conversion, just focusing on new customers. That's also helped to drive incrementally better traffic. All the leading indicators we're seeing on that campaign so far are cost per new visit, higher new visit percentage, or CPMs, just generally better indicators, ROAS consistent with everything else. So
that was a custom conversion
and
event
that's
with
what we did
1 day click going after a new customer percentage.
Yeah, going after new customers, a custom purchase event that fires only for new customers in your account. We've been running, this has been one of the classic playbook moves for the last couple of years, and we started running it in March 2024 when there was a big issue with Meta Signal. And that new customer event is what got all of our accounts out of the muck, so to say. So that was a big deal. Redeployed that, showing some really strong signs with it again. So we might be moving more spend over to that event on some accounts. I think when there's signal deficiency, one thing I've learned over the years of these kind of macro events happening are don't panic and don't make reactionary decisions. A lot of folks just read the data that's right in front of them and start making pivots and changes and tests and throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to get something to work. I know some accounts just completely pulled their spend back, which I know there's times where you do want to pull back. But what I've found to be the best is just to keep in mind that if you're trying to make pivots and changes and things here on one side of the equation, on the operator side, know that like you're not making these projections or things against a static system. It's a dynamic system on the back end that's not stable. Meta doesn't even know what's going on. There's no consistency to this side of it. So when there's no consistency to this side and you're creating more inconsistency on this side, you end up getting these like mixed signals that actually is worse for your account. So a lot of times what I like to do is try to maintain as much consistency on the operator side as you can, really honing in and doing what you know without a shadow of a doubt should work or would work. Going back to basics, looking at creative, looking at targeting, and tightening your budgets and trying to keep consistency on this side. So then on this side, the Facebook algorithm, delivery, all of that, when it's whack, let it be whack. The dust is gonna settle eventually. And then you start pushing back spend, you start getting you start testing again, you start figuring out what the next move is. I think that's been the biggest learning lesson, not even in this one, but in just other events like this, is you gotta hunker down your sales. You gotta maybe slow your roll a little bit, try to keep momentum where you can, but I don't try to overcorrect. That's something that a lot of, I think, younger operators tend to do, or less experienced media buyers try
And
to do,
that's
is
something I think
overcorrect.
AI does a lot, is it will overcorrect because you're reading UI data, UI UX data, even if you're pulling it from a different source of truth, GA4, but it's the worst if you're looking at the meta UI. And I think that's where you have a lot of these day trading activities happening inside of the accounts because AI is optimizing based on the surface value of the data and it has zero contextual window. And I'm talking about in terms of you set up a simple Meta API integration and allow it to just autonomously flick switches in your account. But I think a lot of that has happened in Meta accounts, especially for novice buyers that don't have the experience. And you're not looking at it from a historical context or looking at it in reference to all of the other accounts that you're managing. Because the only way that you see these anomalies is because you have access to so many different accounts and you have insight from your Meta reps and everybody else in the industry. But without that, you would just be looking at one dashboard thinking that your account is in whack without really knowing that there's a greater play going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I say this a lot, like, especially with all the AI stuff recently. Sure, hire AI to run your ads, but like AI is not going to know what to do when the model changes on the back end, when the algorithm changes, when things shift. It doesn't have that context. And not only that, you're paying agencies, you're paying me not to just know what to do when things are stable and consistent. They're there to know how to figure out what's going wrong and troubleshoot it when things are going bad. You're paying them for the seasons like this, where it's, okay, do I have the best kind of problem solving mind in the account, thinking through these very multi-dimensional abstract problems to figure out attribution and the account and traffic and everything. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for somebody that can think on that level and apply their intellectual capital to your account at that time. So yeah, sure, Claude can get you through when all things are easy, but no, it can't. I think there's a lot of brands learning right now that, wait, Claude can't run my ads. And it's not something that we should just fully give accountability to AI on. And there's money involved. You need a human in the loop.
Yeah, you definitely do, and you need a human with data.
Yeah, cross category, cross account.
That's the stuff that AI can't see. And even if it could, if we want to go super technical, the context window even in a million token conversation, but the context window that has to be referenced in order for it to make appropriate decisions is not nearly the context of a domain expertise.
It's true. And you can't create that context window. We're trying to create a sliver of it with ad signal, but you can't synthesize human judgment. And that's something that I think is important to remember. As much as we want to automate things and make things efficient, I don't know. You're paying for good decision makers. You're paying for somebody to make the right decision at the right time. And especially when it's dealing with resources, upwards of $200,000, $300,000 a day in spend. You want them using AI, but you want them making the call based on their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to deploy $300,000 a day and just say, Claude, make the best decision for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's interesting.
Leaning more heavily on CDV in some accounts, noticing some weird discrepancies on cash versus clicks only accrual, and the way that it reports new customers, just signal quality and traffic quality being poor, conversion rates being really low. Yeah, I think.
Where do you see that going?
So
it's like we've been chatting now for a year almost. It seems like this is an ongoing conversation of meta anomaly, signal issue, diagnose the signal issue, leading to some misattribution. What does this look like in 10 years? Is attribution completely changed? Is it totally just TV advertising, impressions is the only metric, or what are brands looking at?
Yeah, I think Meta would love it if it were like TV advertising and the black box and everyone just trusted them with the budget. I think that's where the platforms are trying to get us back to.
Interesting.
Because there's no question that you need to spend on digital now, just like there was no question you needed to spend on TV in the 90s. But now that they've convinced the world by giving digital all this measurement and tools and tactics and targeting and all this stuff, I feel like they're at a world where they're going to basically force us to not use that stuff anymore, and it's going to be more of a black box like it used to be, because then there's not really as much accountability. And I don't know, this is just my kind of tinfoil hat of like, maybe it's probably going to be a lot more view based, a lot more based on incrementality, on driving MMMs, and I think click-based measurement will start to fade away quite a bit. Yeah, that's just my about this. I think it already has. I heard a very interesting thing today. We could put this as its own LinkedIn post, but the consent banner on your Shopify store. You have a client, they recently discovered that if a user comes to the website, let's say they come to the website through Meta, email pop-up fired, boom. They put in their email address. All right, email address is in, we captured the lead, they close the pop-up banner. They go to browse on the site. Now, the second banner that pops up is a consent banner, right? It says, this site uses cookies, da da da. You can either approve or reject. If they reject in the consent banner, it automatically removes the email that they just gave you from your list. There's a massive gap that we discovered of, or they discovered of, that actually wanted to opt in on their email, hit the reject button, and suddenly that whole pocket of users are not on their website.
Oh my gosh.
Perfect example. This probably makes a lot of sense. Consent settings are wreaking havoc more than people realize. That's interesting. That's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of people that don't accept the consent banner or they just reject it. And they're invisible to the click-based attribution. So how do we...
That's crazy. And imagine that people that are leaving their email with the expectation of getting a discount or getting something in return. Or I'll do that. I'll leave my email and I'll think I don't need to be on the site anymore and then just close it. So if I reject the cookies or if I close it without accepting, that's gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you put your email in first.
I wonder how many people know that.
Not many.
Well, hopefully about to be more.
Not many, that's for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's actually mind-blowing. See, that's really interesting.
I know.
Any progress on the AI creative piece? Or is that side project at this point?
Not a lot. I've got it built into AdSignal now. I haven't been utilizing it that much. I think a lot of the AI stuff is, I need to get the team to utilize it more, I think. And then figure out, I need to revisit building it because I got focused on building some other stuff recently, but not
So I went through all of our calls last week as I was building this CE Digital brain in Claude, which I remember I owe you to show you where it is. And in one of the videos, I went back to something you said. I asked you, what are your thoughts on AI creative versus human creative? And you said AI creative is human creative. It's just humans using different tools to make the creative. And I think that part's really true now with AI generated creative. Because anybody can ask Claude, build me a creative, or the carousels are like the easiest possible thing to generate now. It's just HTML text. You throw it on an image and swipe it together. But I think the difference is now people that are using AI to build scene structures inside of Nano Banana or inside of Kling and like really stitching together, okay, scene 1, here's the script. Here's the voice selection from 11 Labs. And you're using so many different tools and stitching it together. You might as well have just shot the video and put it together with a video editor. I don't know if maybe you are saving a bit of time. It's definitely not as expensive to use it, but it's still humans orchestrating the process. Yeah.
Humans, exactly. Well, even AI UGC. I took a course recently on creating AI UGC, and it was like, this is like a 5 to 10 step process this guy goes through to make a UGC creator. It's not easy. It's like you don't have to pay an actor and you don't have to source all that stuff. But I'm like, it's still a lot, which actually touches on something we're working on is we're building out and I think we've talked about this, but creator partner manager onto our business where we go and we source the creators, we brief them, we do the contract on behalf of the brand. We handle all the communication. They shoot the content or they send us the raw content and we edit it. I think that's a really scalable model because a lot of brands just don't have the horsepower to do that. And then there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of things that unless you have a system in place or you've done it before, it's really hard to implement. So that's a new service that we're going to start adding is a bolt-on to our already existing retainers. But yeah, because I noticed that is a massive need for every brand we talk about. It has a need for creative.
I think the natural objection people would have is why, when there's so many UGC creation tools out there, why use CE Digital? But the real answer that is until you start to think about it, if you guys are the ones managing the performance and making all of the data decisions and seeing the best performing ads and breaking it up by millisecond and seeing how the conversion rate or the view rate drops, you have the best insight ever to build these creative briefs and inform the person that's creating the content.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And that's where AdSignal is super powerful. And Signal Engine, which is coming live soon, is like that cross vertical, cross industry, cross brand analysis and API. I think there's a huge gap on the actual intelligence.
Sorry, what's Signal Engine?
So Signal Engine is all of the analysis from our ad signal, right? And all of the data, the qualitative, everything gets tagged, organized, and stored in a separate database that's queryable by an API to go and inform generative AI tools. And also it's creating a tagging system like Scale AI did, but it's basically tagging and understanding creative from it's got a whole taxonomy. It's just basically taking all the data, organizing it, and making it sellable back into the marketplace. What it allows is you can do cross brand, cross vertical. It anonymizes everything. So you can ask something like UGC apparel. What are some of the top hooks for UGC apparel for women over 35? And it'll give you real-time insights on things that have done really well. If you're like trying to build an ad or an ad campaign, it's like a place you can go to source context for that generative AI.
That's really cool. And that's the data layer that we were talking about. That's nothing that you could just GPT into existence. You have so much context, so much information that you're building that off of. That's really cool.
Exactly.